deserve.
MVP frontrunner Joel Embiid putting on another show last night. Is he the most unstoppable player in basketball? And if it's not Embiid, could it, should it, might it be Nikola Jokic? I'll tell you why the reigning MVP is trending towards back-to-back and why Nick is all sorts of fired up about it. And LeBron James sitting it out last night with a sore knee, had some delicious but not so nutritious arena popcorn. You guys know how much butter they put in those things?
Jenna,
that is
you
just
don't know
like
that.
a caloric death trap.
I think he's
no,
okay.
I know that stuff. Good morning, everyone. I think I'm okay and I'm not eating that kind of popcorn. I'm just joking. First things first on a Tuesday morning, Nick Wright, Chris Broussard, Kevin Wildes. I am Jen. I don't eat that kind of popcorn. What do you think, Wildes? Should we be shutting LeBron down? Is it time to shut him down?
Shut him down.
I mean, he shut himself down last
get
night.
your pop, guys.
Shut him
Get your
down.
popcorn ready. LeBron's got it early. There's going to be a lot of drama. Not quite. I think you should shut it down with an asterisk. You know.
With
This
an
might be,
asterisk. All right.
we're 30 seconds in, and I already wish I
To be
skipped
discussed.
today, for the record.
To be discussed. There is
the
no
record.
skipping Tuesdays. It just comes. We'll get to that. We start in Philadelphia. Bulls and Sixers, Joel and James, James and Joel, the new tandem, appears to be working out quite well. Embiid gave you 43 points, 14 boards last night. Dominant night for the big man. His running mate, James Harden, 16, 14, and 8. Sixers should be quite pleased with their new arrangement, 5-0 in games Harden suits up. They beat the Bulls 121-106. So the formula appears to be working so far. Nick, what do you make of Harden's impact in Philly?
Okay, so he's obviously been outstanding, and we can show you the numbers of his time in Brooklyn versus his time in Philly this year. I understand it's very brief in Philly, but the reason that these numbers shouldn't shock you is aside from the field goal percentage and three-point percentages, which with Philly are higher than we've seen from Harden even in his best seasons, you look at those numbers, you're like, yeah, I've seen that from James Harden before. I've seen this version that Broussard has accurately said at his best is one of the only players in league history who is an all-time scorer and an all-time playmaker. That, you know, the guy who's going to finish first in points and third in assists all time, who we saw eating the popcorn's probably at the top of the list. But there's other guys like it. I'm sure Broussard agrees. And so we have, so what we're seeing in Philly right now is odd. Because, and I know you guys give me a hard time about certain things, but I hope you guys and I hope the audience believes me on this. It is incredibly important to me that I come across as fair on this show. That's like maybe if I had a sign like Wildes does, I don't really care about being kind, but I want to be fair. And I worry what I'm about to say about James Harden is going to appear to be unfair, Broussard, but I believe it. I think his excellence with the Sixers is actually a further indictment on not just the end of his time in Brooklyn, but the entirety of this season in Brooklyn. And it made me start wondering, it has made me start wondering, when do you think Harden quit on the Nets? Because we know he quit on them at the end, you know, the Sacramento game, the 4 points, that just nonsense. Do you think it's possible he quit on them before this year even started? That after how last year ended, then the mess with Kyrie, then all of it. Because, Brew, we were grasping for what's happened to James Harden. Did he have the worst hamstring injury in the history of the world? Did he just get too old overnight? What we were talking about, oh my God.
The rules,
can you
we
imagine?
thought.
You trade for him, you're going to have to give him to who wants to give him is that next contract? Oh, it's an albatross. And like that, overnight, the magical elixir of going 90 miles to the west, he's almost basically apex James Harden immediately. And is it not concerning, or is it not a little vexing that happened? And does it not to you make are you not doing what I'm doing, which is wondering, remember when he said when he got to Philly, this is where I always wanted to get to? This was always my first choice? Well, was that true? And were you working on that game 1, not just game 45?
I disagree with your take that essentially you may be saying he shut it down in the beginning of the season. I'm not going to kill it, though, because you're right. You and I and Wilds, we were all going back and forth like, what's wrong with James Harden? Is he still a superstar? Now, you had him maybe barely making the All-Star team. I mean, you were harder on him than I was. I thought he was playing well, just not up to the superstar standards he'd set over the past decade. But I think you are being a little harsh, Nick, because in December, I do believe his hamstring kept him from getting in shape over the summer and from coming in at the top of his game. All right. But if you look at his progression, Nick, in December, Harden averaged 26, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds a game. And through the calendar year of 2021, the Nets were 23-10, the number 1 seed in the East. So I don't know if our expectations were so high because Kevin Durant was back full time and it seemed like they should be playing better than they are. But they had the number 1 record in the conference and his numbers were very good. Now, what I think the difference, Nick, is this in Philly. And this might sound strange considering his history, but hear me out. James Harden's incredible production in Philly right now, and mainly you pointed out the differences. Field goal percentage and three-point percentage and turnovers. He's only averaging 2.8 turnovers a game in Philly. That he's always been around 4 or 5 turnovers a game. So that is huge as well. Here's why I think it is. James Harden has never played with this much talent before. What? What about Oklahoma City, where he started his career with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook? Yes, but he was a baby and he was coming off the bench. So on the outside, I'm taking that away. If you look at Brooklyn, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, of course, that's awesome, but they rarely played together. It was basically he was with one or the other, right? I got KD or I've got Kyrie. Rarely were the 3 of them together. And if you look at him in Houston, he had Dwight Howard, or he had Chris Paul.
He had one.
Or he had Russell Westbrook.
Right, it was one guy.
Right, he always had one other offensive guy and then a bunch of role players, defenders, grinders, spot-up shooters who were limited offensively. Now, you got Joel Embiid. Now, Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook were guards too, ball-dominant guards. So they weren't the perfect fits with Harden. Now he's got Joel Embiid, who is much more skilled offensively than Dwight Howard ever was. And then he's got Tobias Harris, who has proven over a decade he's a legitimate 18 points a game